2 years ago, I had to move to Fresno, California. I really didn't want to move. I loved my friends back at home and I was gonna miss them so much. But there wasn't really anything I could do about it. I had no choice in the matter, so I moved on with life. So I'd been living in Fresno for almost a year and I was coming around to it. Most of the people who lived in my neighborhood were really friendly, except for this one guy who lived at the end of the block. His name was Dan. He was always pretty awkward and seemed nervous when I tried to talk to him. And every night when I walked my dog down the street, his house would be entirely pitch black except for one room in the corner of the house. And it was always the same room. Every night I walked my dog at the same time on the same side of the street. And I started hearing noises coming from this room every time I walked by. It started off quiet, but as weeks went on, it got progressively louder and louder. And it started to sound like muffled yelling. But as far as I know, he lived there alone. And I never saw him have any visitors. The only car I ever saw in his driveway was the one he drove. So one night I was walking my dogs and I got to the corner of the street where his house was, and I heard the noises again. So I paused and I listened. And it sounded like someone was yelling, "No, no," over and over again. But then it got silent, and the light in the room flicked off. And then I saw the front door to his house open. So after the screaming stops and I hear his front door open, I panic. And I start walking away with my dog really fast. And I didn't turn around for like 3 minutes. But finally, when I did turn around to see if he was there, he was standing there in his yard, arms crossed, staring at me. So I kept walking away in the opposite direction of his house and mine. And finally, after a while, I felt safe to turn around and go home. I walked past his house, all the lights were off, he wasn't there in the yard anymore, and I couldn't hear any noises. The next day it was a Saturday, and I decided to go for a bike ride. So I'm getting my bike from the garage, and I turn around, and my neighbor is standing right there behind me. And obviously I was startled because I hadn't even heard anyone walk up behind me, so I was like, "Whoa, hi." And he was really chipper. He was like, "Hi, how are you? Are you going for a bike ride?" And I was like, "Yep, beautiful day." And then his expression really hardened and his eyes actually looked like they got darker. And the next thing he said to me was when I really started to get creeped out. So I'm about to go on this bike ride and he's standing there outside of my garage staring at me really seriously. And then he goes, "I think I saw you outside of my house last night." And I was like, "Oh, you did? Yeah, I walk my dog past your house every night, so yeah, maybe." And then he's like, "I think you saw me too." And I don't even know what to say. And then he goes, "You may have heard some noises. I'm obsessed with horror movies. I watch them every night, and I like to turn on the volume as high as it can go. I just wanted to let you know so you're not alarmed or anything." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, no worries." And then I lied and said I was meeting up with a friend and that I had to go. A few days later, I walked by his house again at night while I was walking my dog, and I heard really loud screaming noises again. But this time it was the realest it had ever sounded, so I got really freaked out. And I just knew in my gut that something was wrong. And even though I was panicking and freaking out and knew I had to be brave, I decided to walk across his lawn to his house and look inside his window. And his curtains were shut, but there was a little sliver that I could see through. And what I saw was terrifying. A 16-year-old girl who I recognized. I had seen her in the news because she had gone missing about 4 months earlier. So I started backing up across his yard, and I was fumbling trying to find my phone so I could call the police. I got my phone, I started dialing 911, and I'm still standing in his yard. And when I look up, it was just like it would have been in a horror movie. He's standing in the window staring at me. And I didn't want to be stupid and run away because that would look suspicious. So I was like, "Hey, sorry, my dog pooped over here and I'm just picking it up, my bad." And he didn't even say anything. He just shut his curtains really tight. And I felt like I was gonna puke. I was so scared. 5 minutes later, the police show up. They dragged him out of his house, and when he saw me standing there watching, he looked at me with so much anger and evil that I had to look away. When they brought the girl out of the house, she was crying and she came over and she hugged me. And she said, "Thank you. I've been seeing you walk by this house every night with your dog, and I was hoping one day you would see me."